his ice-cold son, the killer is bound. Each knot and twist was deliberate, a reminder that his own blood now held him captive. The weight of the rocks pressed into his flesh, a constant ache that would never fade. Scotty stepped forward, her presence sharp as frost. In her hands, a serpent writhed, its fangs gleaming. She fixed the creature to a stalactite directly above Loki's face. "For Balder," she said, her voice steady and cold. The serpent's jaws parted, and a bead of venom gathered at its tip. It hung for a moment, then fell. Loki's scream reverberated through the cavern, his body arching in agony as the venom burned into his skin. The pain was relentless, searing into bone, and the world above felt its echoes, earthquakes shaking Midgard, rivers shifting, the roots of Yggdrasil quivering. The gods watched in silence, their faces unreadable. Justice, they believed, had been served. As the serpent's venom continued its slow assault, the rhythm of torment became all-consuming. The next drop formed, poised to fall. Then a figure emerged at the edge of the chamber, a woman, silent, a wooden bowl cradled in her hands. Sigin's arms were blistered, her sleeves stained, but her grip was unwavering as she stepped into the circle of pain. The cavern held its breath. Sigyn knelt, her presence a quiet defiance. The venom hissed into the bowl, wood darkening with each drop. The gods turned away, their judgment complete, but the story within the cavern was only beginning. The bowl rested in Sigyn's hands, its wooden sides polished by hours of silent endurance. She knelt on the cold stone, skirts bunched beneath her, and waited for the serpent's venom to fall. The first drop struck with a hiss, a thin wisp of smoke curling up as Loki's breath caught in his throat. She kept her gaze fixed on the bowl, her resolve anchored by the rhythm of her task. Time unraveled in the cavern, marked only by the relentless cadence of the venom. Drip, catch. The liquid sizzled as it struck the wood, the heat seeping through Sigyn's calloused palms. Each shift of her grip was subtle, a quiet adjustment to keep the bowl steady as her arms ached. Above, the serpent's shadow twisted over the stone, its coils unmoving, its venom gathering in slow, deliberate drops. Loki whimpered, bracing for pain that had become his constant companion. The sound of his dread was sharper than his cries. The air hung heavy with the stench of scorched flesh and the metallic sting of poison. The darkness pressed in, broken only by the faint glimmer of Sigyn's tears as they mixed with venom in the bowl, each drop a testament to her resolve. The silence between drops was punctuated by Loki's ragged breaths and the distant echo of water dripping from the cavern walls. Sigyn's world narrowed to the weight in her arms and the threat above. The bowl filled, the venom rising perilously close to the rim. Sigyn's muscles trembled, but she did not let her grip falter. When at last the bowl brimmed, she had no choice but to turn away. In that brief moment, as she emptied the venom onto the rocks, Loki's body convulsed, his scream raw and unrestrained. The poison ate into the stone, leaving blackened scars as Sigyn hurried to wipe the bowl clean and return to her vigil. For time beyond reckoning, Sigyn remained. The myth offers no window into her thoughts, only the image of her kneeling, unwavering as Loki's mind splintered under the weight of his agony. Was she remembering laughter in sunlit halls, or simply unable to imagine leaving him alone in the dark? The venom's rhythm never changed. The bowl would fill. Loki would suffer. Sigyn would endure. In the hush that followed each scream, a question lingered, one that neither gods nor mortals could answer. Love in the dark was never simple. While the gods turned away, Sigyn remained, her presence reshaping the meaning of Loki's punishment. His betrayals had echoed through Asgard, yet her loyalty was a force the gods never expected. The Eddas offer no window into Sigyn's thoughts, recording only her actions. Blistered hands, a steady bowl, venom caught before it could sear flesh. This silence leaves space for us to wonder. Was it love that held her there, or a deeper sense of duty, something older and more enduring than the gods' own laws? Loki, once the master of deception, now depended on the mercy of the one he had so often left in the shadows. When the bowl overflowed and Sigyn turned away, each drip crept like fire through him, twisting his features in agony. His eyes, when they met hers, flickered with both gratitude and resentment. He needed her, but the venom's torment mingled need with bitterness. Still, Sigyn returned every time, catching the next drop before it could fall. The myths do not say what passed between them in those moments, only that she stayed, her resolve unbroken. Scholars often call Sigyn the embodiment of loyalty, the ultimate symbol of spousal devotion. Yet, her sacrifice was more than an act of love. It was a quiet rebellion. By kneeling in the cavern, she defied the gods' vision of justice. Odin had crafted Loki's punishment to be absolute, to break him alone in the dark. Sigyn's refusal to abandon her husband became a shield, her presence a silent protest that denied the gods complete victory. The Eddas never assign her a motive, leaving modern readers to fill the silence with their own questions and interpretations. Was her endurance an act of compassion or a challenge to the order imposed by the gods? Each drip marked the passage of time, each bowlful a measure of suffering and steadfastness. Loki's laughter, once quick and sharp, faded into broken gasps. His words, sometimes curses, sometimes pleas, found no purchase. Sigyn's hands grew raw and ruined, but she did not falter. The cycle of pain and mercy continued, unbroken. In the end, it was not just Loki who endured the gods' punishment. Sigyn's vigil transformed it, turning isolation into a shared ordeal. In the darkness, her silent defiance and unwavering love became part of the myth, a testament to the power of presence, even when the world has turned away. Sigyn's vigil stands as one of Norse myth's quiet marvels, a steady presence in the shadows, her strength measured not in battle, but in endurance beside the one the gods condemned. As Loki writhed beneath the venom's relentless burn, Sigyn's hands never wavered. The Eddas remember her not for words or deeds of glory, but for the silent rhythm of her care. Her story reminds us that sometimes love endures in darkness. Sigyn's vigil continues until the twilight of the gods, Ragnarok, whenever that may come. Would you have stayed? If Sigyn's silent strength moved you, let us know in the comments or share your favorite Norse hero below. Imagine being one of the greatest hunters in the world, known for your unmatched speed and skill. But despite all your abilities, your destiny is determined by a simple golden apple. Let me tell you the tragic tale of Atalanta, the huntress who couldn't escape her fate. Atalanta was abandoned at birth by her father, Zeus, who didn't want a daughter. Left to die in the wilderness, she was raised by a she-bear, learning to hunt and survive. As she grew, Atalanta became a legendary warrior, her skills in hunting unmatched. But no matter how great she became, she could never escape one thing, her prophecy. A prophecy foretold that Atalanta would only marry a man who could outrun her in a race. As the years went by, many suitors came, eager to win her hand. But Atalanta, fiercely independent, defeated them all. Her speed was unbeatable, and no man could match her skill. Then came Medea, a brave hero who had heard of Atalanta's strength and beauty. Unlike the others, he didn't boast about his abilities. Instead, he came prepared with a plan. Medea, knowing Atalanta's curse, asked the goddess Aphrodite for help. She granted him 3 golden apples, which he used to distract Atalanta during their race. As Atalanta raced ahead, confident of her victory, Medea tossed the apples one by one in her path. The golden apples were so beautiful They distracted Atalanta just enough to slow her down. In the end, Meleager won the race, and Atalanta was forced to marry him, despite her reluctance to give up her independence. But the story doesn't end in happiness. Atalanta and Meleager's marriage was plagued with regret. Atalanta, still driven by her need for freedom, felt trapped by the very love she couldn't escape. And in the end, Meleager, whose destiny was also marked by the gods, tragically died before she could ever truly be free. Atalanta's story is a tale of love, fate, and the clash between personal destiny and desire. Despite her unmatched strength and independence, her fate was sealed by love, and her story remains a tragic reminder of how even the most powerful can be brought down by what they cannot control. If Atalanta's bittersweet story of fate and love left you in awe, subscribe for more untold Greek myths and the heroes who shaped the ancient world. Imagine having a wish so powerful that everything you touch turns to gold. Sounds like a dream, right? But for King Midas, this dream turned into a nightmare. Let's dive into his tragic story. Once upon a time, King Midas ruled over a prosperous kingdom known for his wealth and opulence. But Midas wasn't just content with riches. He wanted more. He wished for the ability to turn anything he touched into gold. One day, the god Dionysus appeared before him and, impressed by Midas's devotion, granted him the wish. At first, Midas was overjoyed. Everything he touched, his food, his treasures, his furniture, transformed into gold. His wealth grew beyond imagination, and his joy knew no bounds. But soon, Midas realized the curse of his wish. He touched a rose, gold. He touched his food, gold. Desperate for a meal, he tried to drink water, gold. In horror, Midas realized that even his daughter, whom he loved dearly, turned into a lifeless golden statue when he touched her. Furious with the consequences of his greed, Midas begged Dionysus for mercy. The god, seeing the king's suffering, told him to wash in the river Pactolus. And in that moment, Midas's golden touch was taken away. The river's waters, now imbued with Midas's curse, carried gold downstream, forever tainting the land. King Midas's story is a reminder that greed often blinds us to the consequences of our desires. His once prized gift became his greatest curse, teaching us that not all treasures are worth the price. If King Midas's tale of power and greed left you thinking, make sure to subscribe for more epic Greek myths and their timeless lessons. Stay tuned for more stories of fate, love, and the gods' wrath. Imagine a woman so terrifying that a single glance from her could turn anyone into stone. Medusa, a name that echoes through history as a monster, a villain, and a symbol of pure horror. But what if everything you thought you knew about her was wrong? Medusa wasn't always a monster. Her story is one of betrayal, injustice, and a curse she never deserved. She wasn't born a villain. She was made into one by the gods themselves. But even as a victim, she found a way to turn her tragedy into power. Today, we'll unravel the myth of Medusa and discover the deeper truth behind her story. From her tragic origins to her transformation into a feared Gorgon, to her epic confrontation with Perseus. This is the tale of Medusa like you've never heard it before. Long before the snakes, before the curse, Medusa was a mortal woman of extraordinary beauty. She wasn't born a monster. She was born human, the daughter of the sea gods, Phorcys and Ceto. While her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, were immortal Gorgons, Medusa stood apart as the only mortal among them. But it wasn't her mortality that set her apart. It was her beauty. Medusa's golden hair, radiant complexion, and striking eyes captured the attention of everyone, even the gods. She served as a priestess in the temple of Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, vowing to remain pure and devoted to the goddess. This is where her life took a tragic turn. According to the myth, Poseidon, the god of the sea, became infatuated with Medusa. Overcome by desire, he pursued her relentlessly, and one fateful day he cornered her in Athena's temple. Medusa, defenseless, could not escape his wrath. But instead of protecting her, Athena turned her fury against Medusa. The goddess, enraged by the desecration of her temple, cursed Medusa for what had happened, punishing the victim instead of the perpetrator. Athena's curse transformed Medusa into a gorgon, a being so hideous that no one could bear to look at her. Her golden hair turned into a nest of venomous snakes, and her eyes became so powerful that a single glance could turn living creatures to stone. This moment defined Medusa's new existence. Once revered for her beauty, she was now feared and hunted as a monster. But beneath the horror of her transformation lay a deeper question. Was Medusa truly cursed, or had she been given a weapon to defend herself in a world that had betrayed her? Medusa fled from civilization, retreating to a remote island where she lived in solitude. Here she came to terms with her new form and the terror it inspired. The snakes in her hair hissed constantly, and her reflection, once a source of pride, was now a weapon she couldn't dare to look at. But the world wouldn't let her rest. Tales of the monster of the island spread across Greece, and soon warriors came seeking glory by trying to slay her. None succeeded. Each challenger who entered her domain fell victim to her petrifying gaze, their bodies forever frozen in stone. Medusa's life became one of survival, fending off those who sought to destroy her while grappling with the isolation of her curse. She was trapped in a cycle of violence she didn't choose, but couldn't escape. As the years passed, Medusa's story became twisted. In the eyes of mortals, she was no longer the victim of a cruel curse, but a monster to be feared. The tragic young woman was lost to legend, replaced by the image of a terrifying villain. Enter Perseus, a young demigod with a destiny to fulfill. Tasked with bringing back Medusa's head as proof of his strength, Perseus embarked on a perilous journey to find her. But unlike the warriors before him, Perseus wasn't relying solely on his skill. He had the favor of the gods. Athena and Hermes provided Perseus with gifts to help him on his quest. Winged sandals to fly, a reflective shield to avoid Medusa's gaze, and a sword sharp enough to cut through anything. Most importantly, he was given a magical bag to safely carry her severed head. Perseus's journey to Medusa's lair was filled with danger, but none compared to the final challenge, facing the Gorgon herself. When Perseus arrived, Medusa was sleeping. For the first time in years, she looked peaceful, an almost human reminder of who she once was. But Perseus couldn't afford to hesitate. Using the reflective shield as a mirror, he avoided her petrifying gaze and struck with precision, severing her head in one swift motion. The blood that spilled from Medusa's neck gave birth to two incredible beings, Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chryser, a golden giant. Even in death, Medusa's body produced miracles, a testament to the power she had carried within her. Perseus carried Medusa's severed head back to Greece, where it became both a trophy and a weapon. Her gaze retained its power, turning enemies into stone, and Perseus used it to defeat his foes and protect his people. But Medusa's story didn't end with her death. Over time, her image transformed from that of a monster to a symbol of strength and defiance. Women, especially, began to reclaim her story, seeing her as a figure who resisted the gods and survived unimaginable betrayal. Today, Medusa is more than a mythological figure. She's an icon. Her face appears in art, literature, and even modern movements that challenge systems of power and oppression. But the question remains, was Medusa truly a monster, or was she a victim of a world that feared her power? Medusa's story is a reminder that myths are more than just tales of gods and heroes. They're reflections of human nature, of the injustices and triumphs we still see today. So, what do you think? Was Medusa a villain, Or was she a misunderstood symbol of resilience? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Give this video a like if you found her story as fascinating as we did. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the myths and legends that continue to shape our world. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep looking beyond the surface. What would you do if you gave up everything for love, only to be betrayed by the one you trusted most? In the Greek myth of Medea, love led to ultimate revenge, and the consequences were deadly. Let's dive into this tragic tale. Medea, a sorceress of immense power, fell in love with Jason, the leader of the Argonauts, when he came to her homeland seeking help. Medea, who was deeply in love with him, used her magic to aid him in his quest for the Golden Fleece. She betrayed her own family, murdered her brother, and helped Jason achieve his goal, all out of love for him. Once Jason had the fleece, Medea fled with him to Greece, where they started a life together. But as time went on, Jason's love for Medea faded. He decided to marry Glauce, the daughter of Creon, the king of Corinth, in an effort to secure a more powerful position. Medea, heartbroken and furious at the betrayal, decided to exact her revenge. She used her powers to craft a poison so deadly that it would burn Glauce alive when she put on a beautiful dress that Medea had sent her as a gift. But Medea didn't stop there. In her grief and rage, she murdered her own children, Jason's children, to ensure he would suffer the most for his betrayal. The pain of losing everything she loved was unbearable, and Medea, having left nothing behind but destruction, fled to Athens, leaving Jason to wallow in his sorrow and regret. Medea's story is a tragic reminder of the destructive power of betrayal and the extreme lengths to which love can drive someone. Sometimes love is not only blind, but it can also lead to devastation and vengeance. Does Medea's vengeance leave you thinking about the darkest side of love? Subscribe for more ancient Greek myths filled with twists, power, and passion. Thor, the thunder god, woke up to find his greatest nightmare had come true. Mjolnir, his mighty hammer that could level mountains and control lightning itself, was gone. Without it, the thunder god was powerless, vulnerable, and mocked. The weapon that defined his very identity as protector of Asgard had vanished without a trace. But what happened next would humiliate him more than any defeat in battle. To get his hammer back, Thor would have to do something that went against every fiber of his warrior identity. You won't believe the disguise he ends up in. It all began on what should have been an ordinary morning in Asgard. Picture Thor reaching for the leather grip that had been at his side for countless centuries, his fingers closing around nothing but empty air. The spot where Mjolnir should rest felt cold and wrong, like a missing tooth that your tongue keeps finding. Thor's morning routine, as predictable as sunrise over Asgard's golden halls, shattered in that single moment of realization. The hammer forged by dwarven masters, the weapon that could summon lightning and level mountains, had vanished without so much as a whisper of sound. The initial shock hit Thor like a physical blow. His hand remained suspended in space, still reaching for what wasn't there. Then panic crept in, cold and relentless. He let out a blood-curdling roar of sheer rage, the whole palace trembling. Without Mjolnir, he was powerless, vulnerable, and mocked, stripped of the weapon that made him Asgard's primary defender. The enemies that prowled the borders of the Nine Realms knew about his mighty hammer. They counted on Thor's strength to keep them at bay. Now that strength was gone. Word spread through Asgard's halls faster than wildfire. The other gods gathered in emergency council, their faces grave as they grasped the full scope of the crisis. Odin's ravens had brought no news. The watchmen at the gates had seen nothing. Mjolnir had simply disappeared, as if it had never existed at all. The assembled gods understood what Thor's loss meant for their realm. Asgard stood vulnerable, its greatest protector reduced to a shadow of his former self. Loki stepped forward through the crowd of worried gods, his familiar, cunning smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He offered to investigate the theft using his shape-shifting abilities, volunteering to venture where other gods could not go undetected. The council accepted his proposal immediately, desperate for any lead in their search. Thor watched his brother prepare for the mission, knowing that Loki's success or failure would determine his own fate. Loki first borrowed Freya's magic feathered coat, allowing him to fly in falcon form to Jotunheim without raising alarms. Each dead end pushed Thor deeper into desperation. He imagined facing his enemies defenseless, their laughter echoing as they realized the thunder god carried no thunder. The trail finally led to the most dangerous territory of all, Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. Loki strode into the council chamber with the confident gait of someone who had solved a mystery, but his expression carried an ominous weight. The giant Thrym, lord of the frost giants, had openly boasted about his theft from his massive throne of ice and stone. He had buried Mjolnir 8 leagues beneath the frozen earth of his realm, thrice deeper than any giant's hall, he claimed, placing it where even Thor's strength would be useless. Thrym had what he thought was a simple demand for the Norse gods. He wanted the beautiful goddess Freya as his bride in exchange for the hammer's return. The giant had fixated on her legendary beauty and grace, convinced that possessing both Mjolnir and the goddess of love would make him the most powerful being in all the 9 realms. His arrogance knew no bounds as he described his elaborate wedding plans to Loki, speaking of golden halls and feasts that would last for weeks. Thrym believed the gods had no choice but to accept his terms. When Loki spoke to the council about Thrym's demand, the council fell silent. Freya's reaction shattered the tense quiet that followed Loki's report, causing her rage to break the Brysinger necklace, its gems scattering across the floor in glittering fragments. She declared she would rather throw herself into the deepest ocean than marry the frost giant who dared make such a demand. The gods found themselves trapped in an impossible situation. They could sacrifice one of their most beloved goddesses to a giant's lust, or they could leave Thor permanently weakened and Asgard vulnerable to every enemy that prowled the borders. The council erupted in frantic debate. Some suggested launching a full assault on Jotunheim, but Thrym's fortress was impregnable and his army vast. Others proposed trickery or negotiation, but every path led to either devastating war or humiliating surrender. Heimdall, the far-seeing guardian who watched over the Rainbow Bridge, had remained silent throughout the heated discussions. When he finally spoke, his words stopped every conversation in the hall. His suggestion was so outrageous, so completely unthinkable, that even Loki's jaw dropped open in shock. The gods stared at Heimdall as if he had lost his mind, but they were out of other options. What he proposed, however, would challenge everything Thor stood for as a warrior. Heimdall's words hung in the air like a challenge to the very foundations of Norse honor. The far-seeing god had suggested that Thor disguise himself as a bride and infiltrate Thrym's wedding feast to recover Mjolnir. He spoke with calm authority, tie housewife's keys about his waist, and pin bridal jewels upon his breast. The idea was so fundamentally opposed to Norse concepts of masculine honor that Thor's initial response shook the very walls of Asgard. He declared the plan preposterous and swore he would never hear the end of it if word spread that the Thunder God had dressed as a woman. The assembled gods watched in tense silence as their mightiest protector wrestled with a challenge that could not be solved through brute force or lightning strikes. They had already considered launching a full assault on Jotunheim, but Thrym's fortress was impregnable and his army vast. No other choice remained. Thor paced the hall like a caged wolf, his massive fists clenched as he grappled with the impossible choice between his warrior's pride and his duty to protect Asgard. Every instinct in his body rebelled against the idea of abandoning his identity as a fearsome warrior to play the role of a delicate bride. Loki stepped forward with barely contained excitement, volunteering to accompany Thor as his maidservant. The trickster god's eagerness to participate in this elaborate deception revealed his true nature. While Thor struggled with the concept, Loki was already plotting the specifics of costumes, mannerisms, and the lies they would need to maintain throughout their dangerous mission. The transformation began with layers of bridal linen draped over Thor's massive frame. Servants brought forth delicate jewelry, housewife's keys that symbolized domestic authority, and a dainty hood for his head. Finally came the precious necklace of Brysinger. Each item added to the disguise felt like another blow to Thor's warrior identity. When he finally looked at his reflection, the god of thunder saw an unconvincing bride staring back at him. Thor finally accepted the plan because no alternative existed. The unlikely pair prepared to set off for enemy territory, where their deception would face its ultimate test among giants, eager to celebrate their lord's triumph. The great hall of Thrym's fortress buzzed with excitement as giants gathered to witness their lord's marriage to the most beautiful goddess in all the 9 realms. Thor sat at the high table in his bridal disguise, surrounded by massive frost giants who raised their drinking horns in celebration. The feast spread before them displayed the giants' wealth and power. Roasted oxen filled enormous platters, fresh salmon gleamed on silver dishes, and barrels of mead stood ready to fuel the night's festivities. Thor's legendary appetite struck like a thunderbolt. He polished off an ox and ate whole salmon in moments, tearing through the meat as if he hadn't eaten in weeks. 3 measures of mead vanished as quickly as if someone had poured them into a bottomless pit. The assembled giants watched in stunned silence as the delicate bride consumed more food than most warriors could handle. Thrym's eyes narrowed with growing suspicion. This goddess ate like a battle-hardened warrior, returning from a long campaign, not like the refined Freya he expected to marry. Loki stepped forward with the smooth confidence of a master storyteller. He spun a tale about Freya's 8-day fast in eager anticipation of reaching Jotunheim and marrying the mighty Thrym. The explanation painted a picture of a lovesick goddess, so excited about her wedding that she had refused all food during her journey. The giants nodded in understanding, their suspicions melting away as they accepted this romantic explanation. Thrym felt honored by such devotion and relaxed completely, his doubts vanishing. Beneath his bridal veil, Thor's rage simmered like molten metal ready to explode. Every moment at the feast brought new challenges as he struggled to maintain feminine mannerisms while surrounded by his enemies. His massive hands shook with barely controlled fury as he watched the giants celebrate what they believed was their victory over Asgard. The critical moment finally arrived. Thrym commanded his servants to bring Mjolnir forth, the very moment Thor had trained his eyes on since dawn. The servants placed the legendary weapon before the disguised bride as part of the traditional ceremony. Thor's fingers closed around Mjolnir's familiar handle, and lightning immediately crackled through the hall. He ripped away his bridal veil and roared his true identity to the shocked giants. Thrym's eyes widened in terror as he realized the bride he had been celebrating was actually the god of thunder himself. Thor swung Mjolnir, killing Thrym instantly after crushing his skull with Mjolnir, then turned on the assembled giants, and even the pleading giantess met Mjolnir's crack before the hall fell silent. The theft that had begun with arrogance ended in complete destruction. This tale reveals how even the mightiest heroes must sometimes sacrifice their pride to protect what matters most. Back in Asgard, the Aesir never spoke of the bearded bride again, though a few still hide a smirk when Thor raises Mjolnir. And we end this story with a very valuable lesson. Never steal Thor's hammer. And if you're going to, don't make him dress like a woman.